My next guests are here with a new Hulu series called The Girl From Plainville. That is based on a true story. Please welcome Chloe Sevigny, Elle Fanning, Colton Ryan, Liz Hanna, and Patrick McManus to the South by Southwest studio. We are live for the first time in 2 years. We're together. It is awesome. How does it feel, guys, just to be with folks, a crew? People at a festival. Festival.
Nice.
I'm just happy to see faces again. Yeah. I mean, it's such a joyous experience. I'm like, wow, everybody's beautiful.
Yeah.
I love
We
it.
made the show during the pandemic, and now it's like we're all gonna actually be around each other without masks.
There's no Zoom. We're here, and you apparently met Batman earlier today at South by Southwest.
I didn't
He
meet
was
him.
Batman.
I didn't meet him.
That's
He was
what it is.
flying, around. And
But he looked in your
Fighting crime.
He looked in your direction. He looked in your
he
direction.
saved me. I mean, so.
We have the showrunners and the stars of this new series coming out, premiering March. Hulu, what's the exact date of the March premiere?
March 29th.
March 29th. You guys are having your premiere at South by Southwest tomorrow at 12 p.m. at the South by Southwest Theater. You guys are going to see it with the audience for the first time. Exciting. Congrats.
Thank you.
It's based on a true story. The Girl From Plainville is a real-life person, Michelle Carter, who was 17 years old when we had this case, which is now known as the texting suicide case, where she was convicted of involuntary manslaughter for allegedly encouraging her boyfriend at the time to kill himself. A controversial story. You guys decided to tackle this story before you knew anything about this case, and you heard the story. What was your reaction? Instant reaction. Before you read the headlines, before you went really deep.
I think we all had a similar reaction, which is actually what I think made a lot of us lean in, which was what the story was that the media had put out there, which was very negative towards Michelle, very much that she was a black widow, and that she was the guilty party in this. And I think without investigating it any further than that, that's what everybody ingested from this case. And what Jesse Barron's article, which he wrote for Esquire, which was what we based the show on, that Patrick and I came together to do together. Can I say together a few more times? Together.
It makes me feel loved.
That was really not the intention, but I'm glad you felt that way.
Well, you know what? I just make it about me.
Yeah, well, that took not very long. But
We're
so
live.
we're live, right? But I think the thing about it was the article was imbued with such empathy towards not just Michelle and Conrad, but the families, towards Lynn Roy, towards the Carters, and that empathy, I think, expanded our understanding or attempts at understanding the case more, their relationship more, and that was what made us lean in. It was less, I think, the sensationalization of the case that the media had created, but much more the humans involved.
And were you familiar with this case, the intricacies of the case, before you signed on to play real-life people?
Yes, I was. I mean, I was young at the time of when the kind of media frenzy in the court, all that footage was out there, and I feel like my mom followed the case, and it was definitely talked about, but I was in high school at the time, probably experiencing my own drama and texting drama at the time. So I didn't know the details of it fully, but I had seen a ton of photos of her and those paparazzi photos of her around, and it was out there. But it wasn't until I read Jesse's article and also watched the HBO documentary that I kind of also got to know Conrad more and just dive deeper into it. I think for me, I mean, I grew up with the phone, experiencing in high school, and that instant gratification that I think we all feel to our phones, and that addiction, and how bullying also can happen so easily, behind a phone screen when you're not face to face with someone, what you dare to say or will say when you're not right in front of them, and just the psychology of that is what really attracted me to this whole story. And I think we all tried to be very sensitive to the fact that we are playing real people. Right. But then at the same time, the writers you have to at some point kind of create the character, because we don't know all the truths. I mean, there's been a lot of investigation, and we've got to look at a lot of research and things, but at the same time, as an actor, I think I couldn't necessarily judge Michelle. You have to kind of just plummet into it and dive deeper into what made her do this. And
We're all playing an interpretation.
Yeah, exactly.
And I mean, it's close, and we had blessings from certain people, and But
Did you have
we're
blessings
just
from
trying
the
to
family?
trying to bring a truth to the character and trying to bring, her truth, something that you see in her. I saw in Lynn when I watched her on camera, even though every time I saw her, she's on camera, so she's already like performing to a certain extent, and she has a message that she wants to put across, and so I felt like I wanted to capture a little bit of that essence, because she was repeatedly going out there and wanting people to hear her son's story, and it was very important to her. So.
And you're a mom, you can empathize with this. And I saw an interview with you, Chloe, from a few years ago where you're talking about, we have the same generation, the pre-phone, dial-up internet generation. And you're like, that's when we were cool. You're like, we were cool at that time. No disrespect to the young bucks.
Hey, now, come on. Now.
But as a mom, as someone who comes from this generation, this particular case, as a parent, as Elle was talking about, like the young generation has access to technology, which can be used and abused, stuff that you and I did not have to face growing up. Did that affect your decision to take this role, specifically this character as the mom of a young man who was in part, compelled to, in addition to the mental health issues, to suicide based upon this communication with his girlfriend on text?
Yeah, I mean, I'm curious, how technology is affecting young people, obviously, and I think especially, after COVID, people are feeling more isolated, and like, how are people communicating? And I just thought there was so much to explore there. And now having a son who's going to grow up, and that's all he will know, though. So will he have a different relationship to it? But then I have girlfriends my age who are like, oh my God, he didn't text me back. I was like, you're almost 50. Like, relax. You're a successful woman. Like,
he's fine. He'll be fine. He doesn't text you all the time. Yeah. But Colin, you play Conrad. You have to go off of the tragedy of the fact that this young man died at the age of 18. Michelle, she went to jail, came out. You can rely upon her for interviews if you need. You have footage, but you have just the memory of someone, right? And you have also the family members who talk about it. How was it like to incorporate this character, especially given the weight of playing someone who's passed away?
Well, yeah, I mean, even you saying that, I think the interesting point of entry for me was beyond just like the litany of support we got from Jesse and from these two, which are just like a database of knowledge now in this case, and all of the opportunities they gave us to learn more about this case in depth. The first thing I did when I got this part was I typed in Conrad Roy III's name into Google. And the first page that comes up, I don't know if this is still the case, but I imagine it is. It was like a couple months ago. But the first page that comes up is a Wikipedia page, like many people, and the page is titled "The Death of Conrad Roy III." And that really broke my heart that a boy could have lived such a full life, and yet we are still so interested only in the ending. And so, yeah, I took that into every day, coming at it, knowing that beyond just having this sort of like what the little bits we do have of him just actually connecting with us, I was able to fill in the gaps because I felt like a duty to remind people of the very full life that this boy had.
You guys have mentioned the fact that the headline oftentimes just flattens us. It erases all of us, right? The nuances of a story, of a life, gets reduced to texting assisted suicide case, right? 17-year-old girl from Plainville, just a girl who did this. But then the real life of Michelle gets flattened, the family gets flattened. And there's a balance there between honoring the story, but also you're doing a Hulu series, right? How do you skirt the line between not being exploitative, but at the same time honoring, like you said, the story of characters who lived, some of them who are not here anymore, and the consequences that come with maybe getting that story wrong? It's like a big weight, Patrick.
I think that, we didn't have to stretch very hard to find the drama in the story. We didn't have to expand beyond the material that we had in terms of research. I mean, it was alluded to before that we had thousands of text messages between the two of them, right? That allowed us to build a picture of who not just they were, but who they were with their friends, who they were with their families, what their family life was like. And beyond the depositions and the court testimony and all the other things we had in our hand, actually being able to read thousands of pages of their words was an extraordinary tool for all of us. And so, I sort of want to stress personally that yeah, everybody looks at what the headlines say, and that's the easy way to be reductive and to just reduce a life. But when you actually have the opportunity and the privilege in many ways, and I really would say that it was a privilege to be able to explore who they were behind closed doors, right? That's an extraordinary opportunity as storytellers, right? As a group of storytellers. So what I would really love people to take away from this is that we had this immense responsibility and this immense opportunity to take the story to a place beyond the headlines that people every day wouldn't be able to have access to. And I hope that what we've done is we've paid an honor to all of these lives.
Have you been able to connect with the family?
We were able to talk to Lynn Roy for a couple of times. She's absolutely lovely, and she was very supportive in terms of wanting to have her son's story told. Right. So yeah, we had that opportunity.
And so, Elle and Chloe, you had the opportunity, real life people. Lynn's still alive, Michelle's still alive. I've heard from reviews, people say like, Elle looks just like her. Wow. Like this transformation, even in the trailers, like transformation is stunning. But at the same time, you have to bring your own flourishes to a character, right? So where was the line where you're like, okay, I'm gonna do the best I can to honor this character. I, of course, cannot inhabit them perfectly, but I will give myself a leeway to interpret this based upon the material given to me by Patrick and Liz.
Yeah, I think, I did have a lot of, research material there, but I think, I don't know, the way as an actor, as I kind of approach something, I have to kind of daydream about it and live in my head, and it kind of becomes something else. And I think also doing a series like this, you obviously have more time to tell the story and honestly explore throughout. Our series, it's 7 years, right? It spans 7 years, so all of our characters change so much, and I think the timelines are also jumping back and forth in kind of each episode as well. So to wrap your head around that each day, like I don't think there's a technical side to it. Of course, there's like the acting and that, but then you're like, oh God, like Liz, wait, what year am I at? Like, where am I? I'm like,
am I 17
It was a
still?
more
literally,
awkward conversation.
yeah. I'm like,
Am I 23
wait, am I
here,
20 or 14? You're like, wait. So it's like, there is that element,
Right.
which also I think hair and makeup, of course, played a really big part of that for me, because I do think Michelle really takes on, she has a kind of a physical transformation, but then also that is really inside her. And I think Colton and I, our scenes together, showing them together was obviously something that we haven't seen, and that was very much realized by you guys and the writers, and that was really fun to explore that, and the way that I think that we depict texting on the show, because it's not just we're not always on the screens. We kind of have these fantasies that we get to, obviously the text messages are all the real text messages that we're saying.
But there
we
was
get
a
to
real
act that
romance.
out.
You're exploring
Exactly.
this actual
They were
teen
boyfriend and girlfriend.
romance.
They
So
were
there's
together.
like
But
the
all
joys
over the
of that,
phone. Yeah.
and the dramas and
Yeah.
all of that.
And
is-
also
Yeah,
two
it was just
people-
totally, yeah.
Two people who didn't see each other more than 3 times. They were a couple,
Yeah.
but in real life they only saw each other 3, maybe 4 times in real life, and that was something that I think really fascinated all of us. And as I was saying, gave us kind of a challenge, but an interesting one at that, of how do you portray 2 people who had such an intense connection
Over the screen,
Over
which is
the
maybe not
screen.
the most cinematic.
No.
Our
So we
generation
had
is
to
like,
make that,
Yeah.
But this is like very common, right, for young generation. It's okay. You don't need to see each other 3 times. They have a connection through text, through.
Well, we've all learned that through the pandemic, I think. We can,
Well, like
Too
playing, like
too many
playing,
Zoom meetings.
Lynn
Yeah.
is a real person, and
Yeah.
there's such specificity to the story, but there's so much there for so many people to relate to,
Right.
and like who have been through tragedies, losing a parent, a brother, a child, whatever, and to have that examination of grief through this character, and to be able to find solace in it and relate to her, and so it kind of opens it up a little bit.
And you're talking about the show tackles these triggering topics. So you got bullying, you have suicide, you have depression, you have mental health, and there's a line where you have to honor the sensitivity, but you also have to be true to the story. Right, and so how'd you guys balance that? And I think even the whole team, but how'd you balance, like, listen, we realize this is some dangerous territory, we have to be sensitive, but we also have to be very real as to what these characters went
We
through.
also want to destigmatize it.
Yeah, I think that is a huge part of it. It was, first of all, everybody came on board and committed to this series and telling this story, knowing what the truth of it is and knowing the subjects we'd be tackling. So I don't think anybody was unaware of what we'd be talking about. And I think it's exactly what Chloe said. We didn't want to make a show that was in any way sensationalizing mental health or suicide or grief. In fact, I think making it very relatable in that we all are struggling with mental health. We all are struggling with insecurity or any sundry of other things. It's universal, and that's something that I think is not talked about enough, and it is stigmatized. And so going in with, I think, the empathy for all of us, for approaching every character and approaching every subject matter, and making sure that we were telling the truth about the story, but also telling the truth about mental health, telling the truth about suicidal ideation, how these things, how you can hide everything and nobody would know. I mean, nobody knew, and that's not the only, and Conrad's not the only person that nobody knew was feeling that way.
With Conrad's character, Colton in particular, you said, you don't want him to just to be the Wikipedia page, right? Mm-hmm. And so in the process, in this story, what do we find out about Conrad, like that you wanted people to know? The side about Conrad that is just not a headline.
I think the part that, and I've seen it all now, so I've transitioned from actor to audience member, and the thing that I was the most proud of in the end was that he was just a boy in so many aspects of falling in love for the first time, as well as having very dark hardships for the first time, in terms of struggling with a single sort of parent household, a divorced parental household, all for the first time. And upon watching it, I was most proud of seeing him as a boy, as just someone who was just trying to figure it out like the rest of us. And I think that hopefully will help the destigmatizations, because you'll see someone who is just like the rest of us.
He was 18 years old, and Michelle was 17, and like we mentioned, and is still demonized. And after portraying her and seeing the show, what do you hope people get out from the bigger picture of seeing Michelle, the true big picture of her story, her arc?
It's interesting. I mean, I think she's a very complicated character. Much like you can't, I think we tried to look at everyone's character from an unbiased standpoint, and I definitely looked that way, but then inevitably you can't help but think about the tragedy that occurred. So that's definitely in the forefront of our minds, but at the same time, I think that Michelle was incredibly lonely, and like you said earlier, like that feeling of loneliness that people are all experiencing, and some bigger than others, but especially during the pandemic, and like that feeling of isolation, I guess, that she felt. Which what was interesting to me is kind of how she reached out to the YA and watching Glee. Like I watched all those shows like when I would go home at night, like not every night, but sometimes. And also seeing kind of, for kids, like the community that like kind of Glee provided for the outsiders, right? Yeah. Like in that time when it was such a big hit on television. So that was very much a part of her, and just seeing, God, she was so young and had her own, mental health struggles as well, and just the other side to that of how getting in on a human level, the psychology of how she could, get to that place.
I don't think she really knew how to relate to other people. I mean, she was such a...
I know.
She had struggles with like friendships, and she's a very tragic character.
That's the interesting thing, I think, at the core of
can't really say
this show,
one,
is this relationship between these two, and how
get people.
And how like
I think her looks really get in the way for her. Like people are just, oh, she's so beautiful. How could she have a hard time?
You see what's happening underneath.
Right.
Yeah, like
So
you see this
common to
photo of
some
her, and everybody's automatically like, oh, what a bitch. How could she do that?
Yeah,
But
exactly.
And now you see beneath the headline, and you had I'll give you the final word. Connor,
Oh,
you were saying-
I just think the thing that feels so, kind of my point a second ago, but extended to the two of us in the core of the show with this relationship is that at the end of the day, it's just two young people who really don't know who they are yet, which is the most common problem of any of us. We've all gone through it.
Right.
And I think the thing that makes this interesting is that it ends up becoming a cautionary tale of when you're trying to find yourself and how you go about it and how you can look for it in the wrong ways. And that's.
Thank you guys for coming. Thank you all. Really appreciate it. Congratulations on the show. It's premiering
Yes.
March 29th on Hulu. The premiere is tomorrow, March 12th. Is tomorrow March 12th?
I don't know.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a pandemic. I got my pandemic stuff. I'm amazing.
know.
At 12 p.m., it's premiering at the theater right here in South by Southwest, located inside the Austin Convention Center, and will be available for online screening for 48 hours beginning March 13th. You can watch all of our studio interviews on the South by Southwest TV app, available on Apple TV, Roku, Android TV, and Amazon Fire. These interviews are also available on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/South by Southwest. And for a complete list of our interview schedule, check out SXSW.com/studio. I'm Wajat Ali, and we will be back tomorrow with Jim Gaffigan, Chrissy Teigen, author James Elroy, and much, much more. Thank you for watching.
Good job.
Thank you, guys.